G'day, I'm Tony Glenn and welcome to the PGG Wrightson Stud Tour. This week we're at Peel Forest Estate, the home of Graham Carr and his world-class English Red Deer stud. Let's go and have a look around. Graham Carr, beautiful property here at Peel Forest Estate. Where did it all start, Graham?
Tony, a long time ago. As you can tell, I'm an Englishman.
Yes.
And I was in the family business in England for 20-30 years, which was in joinery. And I went all over the world looking for various different opportunities. And I eventually heard about deer farm in New Zealand. So I came out here, I didn't know anybody, and the whole thing captured my imagination. And I've been here now 23 years. So the reason I got into here, I was very lucky. I met some of the key people that were the movers and shakers in the industry in those days, like Sir Tim Wallace and Mark Ackland, a great friend of mine now and still is, and they all are, and the late Sir Peter Elworthy, who were all very much driving it in the early days. Yeah. So I got a very good I was very lucky. I sort of got a very good introduction to some excellent people, and they just spurred on my passion for the industry, really. I also did a bit of work with going overseas and helping people in this country bring in new genetics from England, from Germany, and from other countries, Romania. And so I was sort of getting involved in that side of it, as well as learning the basics on the farm. And then we were actually visiting next door, and the guy asked me what I was doing. I said, well, I'm looking for a little bit of land. I've got 8 deer. I need to put it somewhere. I'd like to have my own place. So he said, oh, well, Peel Forest Estate's for sale. Kind of look at it. Well, of course, it's 1,800 acres, and I had never farmed before in my life, so I ended up eventually buying it. It was quite a long story, but yeah, eventually buying it.
Yeah. And a lot of work being done out there too with your waterways, keeping things fairly right there with the environment?
Yeah, well, that's been another key thing for me here. I've had a bit of a nudge from the environment, country environment, but basically deer are very destructive on properties, and if you've got a lot of creeks going through your property, they have a habit of getting into them and wearing down all the banks and creating a lot of turbidity. So we had a major program refencing and redirecting and putting 3 creeks into one, but all ended up basically on the same place on the way out, and creating ponds, settling ponds, which also had the great advantage of being a duck pond, which was quite an incentive. Overall, it's improved the quality of the farm, and it just runs better, and you feel much better about the property, seeing all the deer out of the waterways, all the cattle and deer out of the waterways, the water coming off the property crystal clear, and the animals extremely healthy.
Steve Blanchard, you're the General Manager at Peel Forest Estate here. Whereabouts did you hail from, Steve?
Well, Tony, originally I'm from Otago. I came from Lawrence.
Yeah.
And I came here in 2001, so yeah, a few years ago now.
So your antler genetics, where's that background, Steve?
Well, we introduced a bloodline called the Fursland. We still have a strong background in that, and stags like Jameson and probably more so Chancellor Peel, Major Peel, Kerry and Jamie, George, that sort of thing. They are still heavily in the background of our deer. But we've sort of moved on. We've got a young stag, Rob Roy, who's a Fursland also, but slightly different style, a longer type of head. And that's where we really see where our antlers should be going. I think the trophy industry is pretty much over the short and multi-pointed ones. We're attracting a lot of Europeans now to come out hunt in New Zealand. And I reckon, Tony, if we don't produce these big long heads, they'll go elsewhere. There is other people around the world trophy hunting. And so our desire here is to really breed some big long heads. We're not necessarily chasing the highest scoring head. To us, it's got to be an attractive head and have that extra length. Yeah, so that's pretty much where we're trying to aim for.
So it seems a fairly big operation here, Steve. Like velveting a lot of stags. What sort of numbers are we looking at?
Yeah, well, our velvet herd is just under 2,000, and from that comes our trophies, of course, and they're the older line that go out as trophies. In our numbers, we've got about 1,600 hinds. All those hinds are DNA recorded, matched to mum and dad, so we know how everybody's bred. We do a lot of single sire mating, so there's a lot of work involved in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are velveting a big herd, but this land is so great for velveting stags. We don't really get wet, that type of thing.
Yeah. But your main base with the operation here is the meat, the venison?
Yeah, that is probably still the biggest part of the income side of Peel Forest. We buy on paper all our weaners from the commercial farm,
Yep.
which is over at Mount Somers. And of course we have a lot of offshot of our breeding hinds here is meaters also. So yeah, that's a really big part, and we're pretty focused on growth rates, carcass conformation and that type of thing. And yeah, we feel we've made some big gains in that avenue. So yeah, it is a very big part.
Steve, you're fairly well known in the dog trial world. You use dogs on the property here on the stags.
These animals are herd animals, and if you're using dogs under good control, you can actually train them. And our deer work very well for the dogs.
Yeah, and so we might see you down at the Nationals at Wanaka?
Yeah, I'm pretty close to qualifying. I mean, I had a bit of luck, so yeah, I'd certainly like to be there, Tony.
Yeah. Graham Kingsman, Deer Stud Stock Coordinator for PGG Wrightsons for New Zealand. You've been in the game a while there, Graham?
I have, yes, right from when the industry first started, Tony, initially in the farming side of it, and the last 13, 14 years in the live sales of deer.
Yeah, you've seen a lot of changes in those times.
Certainly have. Probably the most amazing one has been the genetic enhancement of where we've come from on the wild capture days through to where we're at now.
Yeah. So how long have you had an association with Graham Carr and Peel Forest, Graham?
Probably going back to when Graham first started, or when he first came out and got into the deer industry. In those days he was mainly German bloodlines,
Yep.
and each stud had their own particular breed of animal. Some were English, some were German, some were Eastern, Hungarian, Yugoslavian. Graham at that stage was very much tied into German and Eastern type animals. He certainly has played a significant role within the deer industry right through that time. And then when he purchased the Fursland herd, that gave the stud a whole new dimension. You've got two camps in there. You've definitely got the venison guys, stud breeders that are focusing totally on venison with breed values and for weight gains in there.
Yeah.
And then you've got the other ones that may well be running a velveting herd. So they're breeding or buying a stag that is suitable for some of that offstream to go into the venison herd, and some of them going into the velvet herd. And then the end result of those velvet stags, fingers crossed that they grow out and are suitable for in the trophy market.
Yeah.
So you have got two schools in there. There's certainly some venison finishers that are not interested in the velveting side at all. And from the stud sales that we've just had, there's been now a defined line between those two or three types of operations.
Yeah.
The industry has certainly, for those that have purchased there, has the genetics that they've got. They've gained a huge amount from what Graham has done through the years.
Yeah.
Without the likes of Graham and the people around him, we wouldn't be where we're at.
Yeah. Absolutely beautiful property. The grounds and the homestead, Graham.
It's a character home.
Yeah.
And the trees, and they brought all the trees out from England. Those Oregons that we saw up the drive are very, very special. They're actually recorded as the best specimen or grouping of Oregons outside North America. And there's some magnificent copper beeches and this big plane tree behind us. Lovely that these people have the time and the foresight to lay it all out, and it's very special property.
Now I understand there's something else going on here, Graham, that you're very passionate about and you're quite involved with. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
We've been doing a lot of research and work with the Yonis issue, which is a big problem, not only in deer, but in the dairy world, and I go now in sheep and cattle and everything else. But we did have a problem here in beginning of 2000, and to the degree that we actually decided to stop selling stags. And we also decided that we had a lot of genetics here of importance to the industry, and we just couldn't let them go. So we got on to Frank Griffin from the head of the microbiology department at the University of Otago, And Frank's been doing a lot of work with, he did the ELISA test for tuberculosis, and then he started developing the ELISA 2 test for paratuberculosis, which is Johne's. It's really become quite a major focus for me and for the farm, and pretty exciting actually, and it's given us an opportunity to do something back into the industry, I think.
What's your role here, Frank?
I'm the head of Department of Microbiology and Immunology, and I'm also Director of the Disease Research Laboratory, which is a specialist laboratory involved in studying diseases largely of domestic animals.
Now, you've been doing a lot of work on Johne's disease.
Yes.
And you've been tied up there with Graham Carr on that. What is Johne's disease, for anyone who doesn't know?
Johne's disease is a chronic bacterial disease. It belongs to the same family of bacteria which cause tuberculosis and leprosy.
Yeah.
And it is a special strain of mycobacteria which is called Mycobacterium paratuberculosis. And whereas TB causes infection of the lungs and the lymphatics, Johne's disease is caused by Mycobacterium paratuberculosis, and it causes disease mainly in the gut, and it causes thickening of the gut, malabsorption, and wastage of the animal, ultimately. If we're looking at Johne's disease and disease resistance and diagnosis of Johne's disease, the really interesting thing from our point of view is that Graham's herd gives us a fantastic model to study the biology of this disease.
Yeah.
Why do animals become infected? How can you diagnose their infection? How can you prevent them becoming infected? Or which animals are going to cure and which animals are going to go on to develop disease? And we believe this disease has a huge economic impact on the New Zealand farming sector.
Yeah.
And obviously, the advantage of looking at resistance or resilience is that you can select for this trait without trading off other traits. It's not linked necessarily to other traits. So you can, in fact, if you want to have growth rates, well, also you can have resistance if you get the right genetics,
yeah,
which shows the heritability is quite powerful. And in fact, the geneticists tell us that they're very impressed by the genetic gains we've had in that herd in a very short time frame, just using diagnostic testing. We've also looked at the impact of natural disease on resistance and susceptibility. And it's interesting that if you just let animals die from disease, that doesn't drive you towards resistance or susceptibility very quickly. It will in time,
yeah,
if you're prepared to wait 50 or 100 years. If we look at Graham Carr's herd, we're moving towards resistance and we're selecting for resistance in all the animals on that property. But equally, we have to, I think, have a proper awareness of what people's expectations are. It's never absolute. It's never going to be 100%. So there's no breed all good and there's no breed all bad. Yeah. So that's where I believe we have to have biological or genetic markers which are linked to susceptibility or resistance. And that's exactly what we're working on at present. We're now doing tests where we take a blood sample from the animal and we're looking for really the flags which say this animal is resistant or it's susceptible. Yeah. And those flags are going to be different. So because a resistant animal will have different genetic markers than a susceptible animal. And that's really quite important to recognize. And obviously what we want are to develop these markers so we can remove animals with the susceptible genotype and select for animals with the resistant genotype. So I think more importantly than talking about breed values are to map the genes which are linked to resistance and susceptibility. And that means we can take a blood sample from any animal and say this animal has, it's got a susceptibility bias and we wouldn't use it. This animal has a resistance trait and we can use it. Yeah. And that's where I think the joy of working at Peel Forest is not just that we can identify resistant and susceptible animals, but now we can understand the biology of resistance and susceptibility. So I think that's the real important package, not just the value we have as a breed value, yeah, but the underlying trait and the genes which cause that trait. And that's exactly what we're working on. And we're doing studies at present where we're looking really at all the markers that get read out in the resistant animals and the susceptible animals, and hopefully then we can produce a package which says this animal has the right components for resistance, this one has the wrong components and it's susceptible. And that way we can start to impact on really another trait, which is disease-resistant susceptibility.
John and Philip Peter, we're here at Levels in South Canterbury. We saw you guys at the sale the other day there, and you come away with something that you like?
Yes. We purchased a Voltimere sire, and he's quite a, I think he might have been the third heaviest stag on the day there.
Yeah.
And we're looking for him just to increase their body size and their hinds a bit more.
Yeah.
And also looking at his stats, he actually cut good velvet as well. So
Yeah.
a bit of a dual purpose animal.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we felt anyway. So
Jumped off the truck all right?
he walked off the truck very quietly into the shed and walked into the sires as if he'd been there
Really?
all his life.
Yeah. Yeah. What sort of country are you running here?
It's a down clay downs country on rolling country.
Yeah.
And we've run about 400 hinds at the moment. We've got 145 velvet stags. We've been buying stags from cars for the last 9 years. We've probably started to concentrate a little bit more on the last 5 years on our velvet side of it, where we haven't been before. And this year we cut over half a tonne of velvet, and most of it's graded Super A and A, so
Yeah.
we're heading in the right direction. Most of the animals that we've been sending to the works are averaging about 57 to 58 k's on the hooks for the deer that we've been breeding through Graham stags.
Our incidence of Yonis has dropped away.
Yeah.
He's got to be commended on the work that he's done on Yonis, because I mean that can wipe a herd out.
Yeah.
And they've done a terrific amount of work on it, and it's you got to take your hat off to a guy like that.
Yeah. So the venison, Graham, where's it all going?
Most of our deer go through two major people. Silver Fern Farms is our major processor.
Yeah.
And I think they're doing an excellent job in going from them more being a commodity trade as they used to be a few years ago to being really top line in adding value to the product and positioning themselves as a real food, high quality food marketer.
Yeah.
And getting closer to those people over there. No, I'm very happy with Silver Fern Farms.
Malcolm Gawley, National Deer Manager for Silver Fern Farms. Whereabouts are you based, Malcolm?
Tony, based in the Hawke's Bay, out of the Hastings office.
Fairly big job.
Yeah, big job, challenging job, but certainly got an exciting future ahead of it.
Graham Carr, interesting man, good man.
Yes.
A bit to do with him?
Yeah, I've had a bit to do with Graham over the years, probably since the mid-80s.
Yeah.
Saw him come out here and he developed the deer property at Peel Forest. Made a huge investment into the deer industry, bought a lot of genetics from overseas.
And working in fairly closely with Silver Fern Farms.
He's a very good supplier of Silver Fern Farms, supplies us between 1,300 1,500 deer a year, so a very valuable client for us as a company.
Yeah, so as a company, what are Silver Fern Farms doing for the future of the venison?
Tony, we're forming a producer venison group. The idea behind it is to get producers in the industry to get together and for us to work with them as a processing company and a food company.
Yeah.
To increase on-farm production and profitability for the venison industry. The EID tags, which was introduced through NATE, I believe will be a fantastic management tool for deer farmers to start measuring performance on their own properties.
Yeah.
Link that into Farm IQ, so they've got a database where that information will then come back to Farm IQ and be held on a central database. Following on from that, when they process those animals with EID tags, that information from the slaughter details will then get transferred back to Farm IQ, and then they'll be able to relate back on their own farm what performance is happening on their property with different genetics that they're using. And that's where I see EID as another key function of for our company.
Yeah.
Progressing on from the traceability, we're going back to the plants and now going to provide farmers with yield information from our plants. So then they'll be able to see first up how their production's going on farm, and then make genetic decisions on what size and what genetics they're going to put into their property to further enhance high yielding animals, therefore returning more to the farmer.
Yeah.
And making a better quality product for us as a company to sell to our customers offshore.
And this is not just stud farmers.
Just not stud farmers, no. Stud farmers are an integral part. Without stud farmers who are introducing new genetics, we won't make the gains. But it's up to the commercial farmers to capitalise on those stud farmers. Yeah. And take advantage of the genetics they've got to then increase their own on-farm production.
Graham, how do you see the future of venison for New Zealand with the change of land use that we're experiencing at the moment?
Obviously, the better quality land on the plains and where else has taken a hammering from the dairy utilisation for dairying and dairying support. And in fairness, you have to say that deer are much better really up in the hills and the foothills and places like that. More natural for them, and the economics of running them up there is extremely good. And so gradually we're seeing the deer industry moving up to the bigger blocks. So with that going on, we've had to change what we produce here, because we're a stud and we need to supply what the industry wants.
Some fairly steep sort of country out there.
Yeah, this is the sort of country that we would like to run our hinds on. It's sort of the natural state, good cover, and we get fantastic fawning percentages on them. We've chosen this country because of the aspect of it. It's later country. Where we are now is we're about 550 metres above sea level, and it's a later growing season which suits the growth curve of the lactating hind, been calving in November. So if we're getting growth in October, they're just going straight into it. So we're targeting this country as our later country and running sheep on our earlier country.
Big joint.
Yeah, it is. We're 6,045 hectares. We winter 32,000 stock units. The deer operation of this place is only 15% of our operation.
Yep.
It's a minimal part of the operation, but it gives us diverse income and spreads workload. So it's worked well for us. We've been in the deer for 8 years.
So Simon, you're getting your stags, your maternal and your terminal stags from down there at Peel Forest Estate?
Yeah, we are. We annually go down and buy our replacement stags for the property. We are sort of targeting those Euro stags for our maternals. We're buying high EBV growth rate stags that suit this country for venison production only. Bearing in mind that we're wanting to keep our hinds at the right size for this country. We want to have an easy care hind because we don't feed out supplements, so they've just got to winter off their own back. So we're trying to we're buying on the top end, to get good growth rates for our finishing farm and our hinds. The terminal side, we have been buying the B11s for 6 years now, and we use them in this country. They're great because they can mate up to 70 hinds on this hill with them. And the thing we like about them is they're so easy to get off the country. They're so easy to handle when we have them in the yards. We truck them, put them out on the hill, and when they finish the job, they're easy to get in. You know, they're good temperament. They can handle them in these blocks here. We can go in after the roar, and they'll be all mobbed up, and we can whip them with a heading dog, and out they come.
The real reason I think why I decided this was the thing for me to really put my oar into and really go for it was the fact that I felt that the venison was the meat of the future. I still do, I haven't changed my mind at all on that, and that's what drives me now, and that's what drove me then.